This is Richard Clarke with the Ramana Maharshi Commentary Podcast. I'm reviewing and commenting on Sri Ramana Maharshi's book, 40 Verses on Reality, or Sat Darshanam. Today is verse 40, the final verse. These are Ramana's words. If it is said that liberation is of three kinds, with form, or without form, or with and without form, then let me tell you that the extinction of three forms of liberation is the only true liberation. My comment: all things with forms have a beginning and have an end. As long as you hold to any form, you'll not be able to plunge into the formless. The idea of form obscures the reality that lies beneath all forms, which is consciousness, which is our very being. Forms rise in our mind as we make ideas of differences. Liberation is beyond all forms. Ramana Maharshi was a sage renowned for his teachings of Advaita Vedanta. According to Advaita, the ultimate reality is Brahman, the impersonal and transcendent consciousness that is beyond all forms and concepts. The goal of spiritual practice is to realize this reality as your own true nature and thereby attain liberation from the idea of birth and death. In this context, Ramana Maharshi spoke of three kinds of liberation: with form, without form, and with and without form. Liberation with form refers to the idea that one attains liberation while still a physical body and perceives everything as an expression of Brahman. This is known as a Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta refers to a liberated soul who has realized their true nature as Brahman while still living in a physical body. Liberation without form refers to the state where the ego has completely dissolved and one realizes oneself as pure consciousness without any sense of individuality or form. This is the Videha Mukta. The Videha Mukta refers to a liberated soul who has realized their true nature as Brahman and who has shed their physical body. Liberation with and without form is a state where one is simultaneously aware of both the formless nature of reality and the manifestation of that reality in the form of the physical world. Ramana didn't talk much about this, mainly talking about Jiva Mukta and Videha Mukta and what transcends them both. Ramana believed that these distinctions were ultimately illusory, and that the true goal of spiritual practice was the extinction of all forms of liberation and all separate forms altogether. This meant that the seeker should not be attached to any particular state or experience, but rather remain focused on the ultimate reality, which is beyond all concepts and forms. States come and go. Reality is always. The idea of the extinction of all forms of liberation may seem paradoxical, as liberation itself is often seen as the ultimate goal of spiritual practice. However, Ramana's teachings were not about attaining a particular state or experience, but rather about realizing the true nature of yourself and the universe. In this sense, the ultimate goal of spiritual practice is not liberation, but rather the realization of your own true nature as Brahman, which, incidentally, is liberation. To achieve this realization, Ramana taught the practice of self-inquiry, Atma Vichara, asking yourself the question, who am I? And tracing the source of your thoughts and perceptions back to their ultimate origin. Where do they come from? What is their source? Through this practice, you come to realize that the true self is not the individual ego, but rather the universal consciousness that underlies all of existence, within which everything exists. The ego can be dismissed as you inquire. Consciousness cannot. It always knows. Existence cannot. It always is. This knowing and being is who you are, not anything. Ramana's teachings of Advaita Vedanta and the extinction of all forms of liberation emphasize the non-dual nature of reality and the ultimate unity of all things. By transcending all forms and concepts, you can realize the true nature of yourself and the universe, and attain the ultimate goal of spiritual practice. One way to say it is that it is the realization of no difference, not the intellectual cognitive idea, but the experiential knowledge of no difference. Ramana taught that the ultimate reality, Brahman, is beyond all forms and concepts. Any attempt to describe it or conceptualize it will fall short. It is beyond the limits of language and thought. However, Brahman can be realized through direct experience, the goal of spiritual practice. Ramana's teachings on self-inquiry are a means to attain this direct experience. By tracing the source of your thoughts and perceptions back to their ultimate origin, you can realize that the true self is not the individual ego idea which comes and goes, but rather the universal consciousness that underlies all of existence and is always. This realization is not a matter of intellectual understanding, but rather a direct experience of your own true nature. It is a state of consciousness that is beyond all concepts and forms, and is characterized by a sense of unity with all things. It is knowing by being. Ramana's teachings on the extinction of all forms of liberation emphasize the importance of remaining focused on this ultimate reality, rather than being attached to any particular state or experience. This is because any state or experience is ultimately illusory, and only serves as a temporary stepping stone towards the ultimate goal of self-realization. States come and go. Reality does not. The ultimate goal of spiritual practice is not to attain a particular state or experience, but rather to realize the true nature of yourself, which is not different from the universe. This realization is the extinction of all forms of liberation. It is freedom from concept and forms, and reveals the ultimate unity of all things. It dismisses everything that changes as a misapprehension, a wrong seeing, since what you actually always see is absolute reality, just in the form of this or that. What is changeless is the screen, not the movie playing on it. Ramana's teachings on Advaita Vedanta and self-inquiry provide a powerful means for you to realize the ultimate reality and attain liberation from the idea of birth and death. So inquire, know yourself, and be always free and at peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this Ramana Maharshi video, subscribe, like, and send me a comment.